Awesome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. Great to be with all of you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And so basically what we're doing, Zayda and I will be trading off kind of questions across, some on policy, some about to get you to just get to know you more, some of them kind of at the intersection of that. But to start off, and then we've allotted 18 minutes on kind of total. So keep that in mind for you don't need to be too brief in answers, but make sure that you're not taking away from yourself later on. But just to start off, tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're running.
Thank you so much, Jonathan and Zayda. Just first of all, to all of you, your commitments in the areas of justice reform have been with me in my heart all the way through. And that has been true for years, actually. And it's been a pleasure building relationships with many of you over the past months. I truly hope we can have time to continue building relationships. The race is changing, on a daily basis, and I hope we can have all time to see how it unfolds. But so why am I here? I mean, the truth is, for me, the justice questions are at the heart of it. I spent 15 years with my family just trying to help my cousin Michael from his first arrest in 1995. Just trying to help, honestly, rescue him from the oppression and injustice of our system of mass incarceration. And the thing that matters about that is, when I grew up in Southern California, prisons were growing all around me. I could see them all over the place. This was about a personal experience. It was structural, obviously, but the point is that it was personal first. Mm-hmm. And when you have somebody you love in prison, you put all of your time and energy and resources in just trying to help, just trying to get to a decent, safe place tomorrow. And my family, we lost Michael in 2009, lost him to gun violence. He was shot and killed by somebody he had met while he was in prison. He was first arrested at 15 and got a sentence of 12 years and 8 months on that first arrest for an attempted carjacking. And when he got out, 2007, huge amounts of time and energy, and then we lost him in 2009. So the point of saying all that is that as I was with Michael, walking that journey with him, the structural issues were always clear to me, but my family's time was going to Michael. And at the point that he died in 2009, that became the point where it was possible for me to tackle the structural issues. And so I began to use every tool at my disposal to try to do that. So for example, at the helm of a major foundation, the $6 billion Mellon Foundation, we have a philanthropic footprint, or did, I'm not there any longer, of $300 million a year. We became the largest funder of education for incarcerated people in the country. We invested in community colleges. This is a foundation that originally basically invested in Yale and not much else. It had a history of investing in elite higher education. We changed that footprint to invest in community colleges. But even leading a foundation like that, it was clear to me that the work I was doing was nibbling around the edges, and that the only way we could actually bring transformation was through the institutions of state government. And I will tell you that in the fall of 2020, when I started thinking about running for this office, the hardest question I had for myself was, well, what if the Attorney General runs? All right. What if she runs? In many ways, I have respected and admired our Attorney General, but I was very clear in the fall of 2020 that I wanted these issues of justice, reform to our criminal legal system, to be at the heart of the debate. And I did not have confidence that anybody else was going to put them there. And that is the reason I am in this race. The pandemic too. The pandemic brought me to a certain kind of breaking point, those things combined. But when I was weighing, really, did it make sense? This was the thing that got me all the way there. So that is why I am running. That is why the commitments I have seen from so many of you have mattered so much to me. I am a person who has been driving change through bureaucracies, through mainstream organizations for 2 decades. I believe we can do that in Massachusetts, and that's why I'm in this race.
Wow, that's an amazing narrative. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thanks, Zayda. I appreciate that.
No, I mean, that's real talk. That's real talk, and I appreciate you sharing that, because it is difficult. As women of color, we all have family that have been incarcerated.
Yes,
it's difficult to in the circles that we inhabit to own that as well as part of our identity.
That is right.
I myself have done a lot of work in the mutual aid space during this pandemic, and have been a stalwart advocate for taking care of people and keeping our communities intact and resilient during this. So our first question is near and dear to my heart, and that's why I'm asking it. How would you evaluate the state's response to the COVID-19 pandemic? And this is going to be kind of a three-part-ish, but like this is like it's a combo question. So how would you evaluate the state's response to the COVID-19 pandemic? What would you have done differently? And how would you ensure that we end up in a better prepared space the next time we hit some kind of crisis like this?
Well, I said in my opening remarks that the pandemic was kind of a breaking point for me, and it truly was. And our state's response was a big part of that. So the short of it is just that in February 2020, I could tell that people knew stuff that the rest of us weren't being told, all right? And in various ways, because I am inside a research university where knowledge, emerges earlier there than in other parts of our society and so forth. And in my mental imagination, I started rattling my cage, all right? I started saying, people, we've got to share this. We've got to get the whole picture out and make clear to people, communicate precisely about what we know, what the questions are, and what the choices are. And I could not get the folks I was trying to make that case to act faster. And as a result, I pulled together a big rapid response network, experts and practitioners, mayors from around the country, and community advocates. We put together the first national policy roadmap in April 2020, advocating for a real ramp up of public investment in testing and contact tracing, the infrastructure that we needed. And we did eventually get federal legislation that incorporated our policy and Biden-Harris policy. President Biden signed an executive order with a piece of our policy in his first few days in office. But I worked at the state level too. I reached out to COVID Command. I tried really hard to get COVID Command to work with local faith-based community organizing groups in order to support the contact tracing effort. I found it very difficult to actually get speedy forward movement. We tried to get Governor Baker to move faster on building out testing infrastructure. We didn't succeed. We did succeed in getting Governor Larry Hogan in Maryland to build out an interstate compact to support testing infrastructure. So that's what I did do and would have done if I had been in the role. And going forward, I think it's very straightforward. We have to be really clear weekly communicators about what we know. What's the state of the art knowledge? What do we not know? What are the judgments we're trying to make? And how are we both working on individual safety? Vaccines keep people individually safe. They also help us with issues of community safety. Masking also helps us with that. Rapid testing helps us with transmission. We've got to be clear about the individual part, the public part, but at the end of the day, clearly communicating and building big stakeholder groups, people on the ground in context, for example, educators who know what's actually the challenge that has to be overcome. Hearing and learning from people who are trying to get the work done is at the core of success, I believe.
Great, thanks. And actually, you already answered the follow-up question in your answer. So I will pass.
So getting to be short. As
bonus points for you so far.
Okay.
And I'll pass it on to John.
Thank you. So our next question is that, so some of a governor's agenda requires legislative action, and some of it can be done by the executive branch alone. So the two-part question that we wanted to ask is, what would be your first priority bill that you would try to shepherd through the legislature if elected? And then name kind of one thing that you would want to accomplish early in your term for which you don't need legislative approval, and is something that you view as a major accomplishment to happen just with the powers in the executive itself.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I think we all have a powerful sense of the vision for transformation that we need. And so this is a moment for focusing on execution. How do we get it done? So for that reason, I'm going to reverse my answer to your question. It really starts with the question of who we put in charge of key agencies in the state. Who's going to run Department of Corrections? Who's going to run the state police? Who's going to run DPU and DUI? For me, that raft of appointments is my single top priority. And then, yes, legislation matters too. Absolutely, it's fundamental. And on that front, I would be starting with legislation on housing. It is time for us to make affordability a statewide effort and commitment, with every municipality and region stepping up. We need a roof over every head. That's what we've got to get done. And so I would be working on legislation that's getting that roof over every head.
All right, so we're going to move it just a little bit from policy to a little personal. I'm curious who your political role models are and why.
So Congressman Jamie Raskin is one. You know, he's another professor turned politician, so that's a part of it. And he has a power and fire in his spirit for justice. You know, he makes a distinction between the politicians who are justice politicians and the politicians who are power politicians. And his picture of the justice politician is the person who keeps the justice mission front and center all the time. That's what drives the decisions. That was what drives the coalitions. And I've learned a lot from watching Congressman Raskin do his work.
Great, thanks.
Awesome. And then, so which kind of governors in either Massachusetts' past or in other states would you say that kind of you particularly admire? And what would you seek to emulate about them, or which policy ideas of theirs would you want to introduce or build upon?
Well, let me just actually start with other states first, because those are the sort of more immediate examples, like nearer term examples, since our recent example is not. Anyway, Governor Kate Brown in Oregon, I admire tremendously. And I think that she has driven innovative policies in both areas of housing and climate. She has also been just extraordinarily willing to build horizontal structures of communication and coordination. You know, we have a big agenda. We have a vision for transformation. Execution is going to be about networked sets of big teams. These teams have to be connecting stakeholders and policymakers. And so I think if we want to actually drive the execution, that's the key thing. And she's really been extraordinary at doing that. Here in Massachusetts, I have a lot of admiration for Governor Patrick. I have a lot of admiration for Governor Dukakis. You know, I think Governor Patrick really gave the state a powerful moral vision, you know, commitment to educating the whole child. We still need that commitment to educating the whole child. And it is time for us to really turn the crank on that and our work in education in the state. And Governor Dukakis, you know, wasn't afraid of big things, you know, at the end of the day. And we've gotten to a place where we have a state government that is afraid of big things. It is time to move past that.
Thank you. Name one word that people who work with you would use to describe you.
Listener.
Nice, nice. And name one word that people who work for you would use to describe you.
Listener.
I love it, love it.
Okay, I'm going to do kind of a little longer one here. So as you note, this is kind of narrow organization is Progressive Massachusetts. How do you define the word progressive when we're talking about, what does that word mean to you as you approach policy?
It means two things. It means transformation and justice. Justice is the entire point of politics. It is the point of what we build together. We can forget that. Sometimes we can think the point is the economy. Well, actually, we need a healthy economy so that people can have healthy and flourishing lives. And having healthy and flourishing lives, that's the project of justice. The economy is a support for the work of justice. So at the end of the day, I think we have forgotten what the point is. And I think progressives remind us, make us focus on what the point is, call us to it, call our hearts to it, call our efforts and energies to it. And then transformation, because you can't just nibble around the edges. If you really embrace that commitment to justice, you do need to do serious work. You've got to change who is at the decision-making table. You've got to change the priorities of your institutions. And you've got to be really clear about how the different tools that you can get from the public sector, from civil society organizations and so forth can come together in this shared direction. So that for me is what progressivism stands for.
Thank you. Well, again, I'm going to keep harping on it because it's my issue, immediate issue right now. Back to kind of the pandemic, it has really shown us I knew there was poverty in this and income inequality in Massachusetts, but I really think it's really highlighted. In the town I live in, Malden, we pressured the city council to create that moratorium where people were, my biggest fear was that people were going to be unhoused. And the food insecurity was just crazy. Every Monday, I would drive 300 meals into Chelsea and just see the blocks and blocks of line, people standing in the cold. So with all of that kind of in mind, I just really feel like it's festering in a state that has such despairing income inequality. How would you address it? And why do you think poverty still exists here in Massachusetts?
Thank you so much, Zayda. That is so important. And like you, I had the same experience. We all have. We know what the structural problems are. We have felt them in our own lives. And even so, the pandemic was like an X-ray, right? It was like, there it is, in the starkest relief you could possibly see. Some people, myself included, riding it out on Zoom while the bottom just fell out from under with such personal devastation to families and individuals. And so the short of it is, this coming election is going to be a debate about the economy. It really, really is, okay? And it's not going to be enough to nibble around the edges. We have an economy that is designed to produce inequality. We have booming growth around our metropolitan core and other parts of the state where we literally have a contracting economy, net negative job growth, okay? And so how do we reverse that? It is about infrastructure development. And that is, a roof over every head is about human dignity. It's about what people deserve, but it's actually also the anchor for the economy. Employers can't actually build small businesses when they can't find a workforce that can have affordable housing within range. We've got to electrify our trains. It is time for us to have a transit and transport network across the Commonwealth that, again, supports people getting to work, supports business formation and growth because people can get to work, also driving that transition to sustainability. So the debate about the economy is going to be, how do we spread the opportunity to connect to our growth and productivity? Not enough to focus just on collective GDP, got to focus on good jobs. Are we really getting good jobs all over the Commonwealth? So got to get a roof over every head, got to electrify the trains, got to spread good jobs. That's how we get an economy that is actually not generating inequality, but is generating shared prosperity.
Great. Thank you again. And so two quick questions that are just kind of more of like a get to know you. So what has been your, as we've all had a number of, let's say time being stuck at home during the pandemic, what is your favorite binge watch during COVID that you've discovered?
Oh gosh. I wish I had a favorite binge watch. I'm afraid it's a binge game. So honestly, it's Mario Kart with my kids. And I'm terrible, which is very embarrassing given the amount of time I put into it over the last couple of years. In fact, my son has offered to give me private tutoring on my driving skills on Mario Kart.
Wow. And so my thing is, I have found that I always need kind of time for reflection and to recharge. And so my question is, what's your favorite spot in Massachusetts to go and recharge?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. I love the Cape, honestly. And my family loves different parts of the Cape. We try out different things, but we love the beaches on the Cape. So we are sort of always, that's where we go in the summertime. I also just honestly love walking along the Charles. You're still in the middle of the city here, but that's what my regular routine is. And nothing is more beautiful than the sun coming up over our gorgeous city of Boston in the very early morning.
Agreed. I love the sunset myself.
Good choices. And then for kind of our final kind of closing question is, after you talk with a voter, how kind of in brief would you want them to how in one sentence would you want them to describe you as the takeaway from the conversation?
The person who's gonna see what we all deserve, a roof over every head, electrifying those damn trains, getting good jobs across the Commonwealth, and who has the skills, experience, and commitment to get it done.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. If you can drop into the chat or just quickly, just now, if people want to learn more about you and your campaign, where can they find information?
Thank you. Please visit us on our website, allen4ma.com, ALLENFORMA.com. And if you want to combat money in politics, spread the word about our website. All right, that's the cheap approach to getting the word out. So we'd be grateful for that assistance. And I hope to earn your endorsement. I hope you will give this process time. As I said to start, the race is changing on a daily basis. I hope we can all have the time to build relationships, test the questions, and really see where we are down the road.
Awesome. Thank you so much.